Dear friends, we gather together tonight in the sight of God, filled with sorrow and grief, gathered to remember our friend Jesus, who has been crucified by the powers of the empire. He suffered a violent death, and his earthly body has been laid to rest. We gather to comfort one another in our sorrow and to draw on God's love and power. We have come to reflect on all that has happened. We've come to remember his life on this solemn night. We've journeyed through the season of Lent and will await the coming light, knowing that the light will always fill our darkness. But for these days, we wait. Coming. In his holy name we pray. they dressed him in a purple robe. They kept coming up to him, saying, "Hail, the King of the Jews," and striking him on the face. Pilate went out again and said to them, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no case against him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." When the chief priests and the police saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no case against him." The Jews answered him, "We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die because he has claimed to be the Son of God." Now when Pilate heard this, he was more afraid than ever. He entered his headquarters again and asked Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Pilate therefore said to him, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have power to release you and power to crucify you?" Jesus answered him, "You would have no power over me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to release him. But the Jews cried out, "If you release this man, you are no friend of the emperor. Everyone who claims to be a king sets himself against the emperor." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus outside and sat on the judge's bench at the place called the Stone Pavement, or in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation for the Passover, and it was about noon. He said to the Jews, "Here is your king." They cried out, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate asked them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but the emperor." Then he handed him over to them to be crucified.
I suspect some of you are surprised to see me here today. I am Marcus Pontius Pilate. I am the governor of Judea. I am the arm of Emperor Tiberius. I am the iron fist of Rome. Things have not always gone smoothly with us. An insolent and insurrectionist people. You have offended Rome. And I have dealt with you harshly. As for your high-minded laws and practices, cast them aside. When your Hebrew representatives demonstrated in front of my fortress at Caesarea, I threatened you with death. You were willing to die. I'll give you that. Oh yes. It is right that I am here. I presided at the trial of this Jesus person. I found him innocent. I gave you have nothing to do with this person. I did not listen. Perhaps I should. I delivered the judgment at the tribunal, and I gave the order for the crucifixion. Herod Antipas was pleased that Pilate. Not even a trade for Barabbas. Barabbas could satisfy you people. No, only the King of the Jews would suffice and mark our place in history. Oh, yes, I was there. Rome was there. I have no regrets.
Two other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots.
I didn't want to speak today, but James and John said that I must, and so I speak on behalf of the 12 of us who followed Jesus. Most of us were fishermen. We left everything to follow him. While the others do not carry the burden of my sin, I must confess my deep regret and publicly ask for forgiveness. Knowing Jesus as I did, I believe that he has already forgiven me. Just last Sabbath, we entered Jerusalem, and the whole city was singing praise to God and the one who would come in God's name. What happened next is indescribable. We have no words to describe our horror, our grief. I still don't know what to say or do. We know now that the body of our friend Jesus is buried behind a stone that is a foot thick. He is protected. No one can hurt him now. That is the only comfort we have in this dark time. The man who showed us all the way to live has died. We got to know Jesus around 3 years ago when he had just started traveling. He was a stranger to us who told us to leave our families, our home, and our career to follow him. And we did. We didn't realize how chosen we were and what a short journey it would be, what danger he would put himself into. He tried to tell us. He tried to tell us that something was going to happen. We did not fully understand everything he said. After he preached to the crowds, we'd ask him what he really meant, and patiently he would explain it all again. We'd walk all day. Jesus would preach half the night to people. We could hardly hold our eyes open. Finally, we'd get to bed somewhere, and in the morning we'd wake up and Jesus was long gone. He was out on the hills praying half the night. There was a power about Jesus that I've never seen in any other man. He could change things with a word, with a touch. He spoke with power to those with sicknesses. He healed them. He could speak to demons, and they would obey him. And I know some of you may find this hard to believe, but he could speak to the wind, to the storm, and they would obey him. It may sound unbelievable, but we saw it with our own eyes. In spite of all that power, he was our friend. He was so forgiving and so tolerant. We were sometimes unreasonable, angry, and irritable, and Jesus was always there encouraging us. We came to see that he wasn't just any ordinary person, or even any ordinary prophet, but we came to see that he was the Messiah, the chosen one of Israel. What I know for sure is that he wanted us to love one another. That's all he asked, and it is the least we can do.
Insults at him. Are you the Messiah? Save yourself and us. But the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said, since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise.
It was only a couple of weeks ago, Jesus came through my hometown of Jericho, some 14 miles outside the city. A crowd had gathered on that day because word had spread about how he healed the blind man, Bartimaeus. I suppose people were curious. I know I was. Blind beggar couldn't see, but now he could. And I couldn't see because tall people were in the way, blocking my view. So I climbed the tree. Jesus spotted me and called me down. Zaccheus, hurry and come down, for today I must stay at your house. The others began to grumble, saying, he has gone to be the guest of a man who was a sinner. He accepted me. He opened my eyes to who I had been and all that I had done. He forgave me with his loving, forgiving spirit. Jesus transformed my life because Jesus had come to seek and save those who were lost. So I came this week for the festival, a changed man, a man forgiven, a man for who, the first time in many years, felt that I could actually bring my sacrifices to the temple and be made at one with God. I had hoped to see Jesus, to thank him, and to show my sincerity. I never expected to see him in the place of crucifixion. Yet even from that place, he continued to forgive those who knew not what they were doing to him. The other thieves, even those who had brutally beaten him and nailed him to the cross. The one who called me from the sycamore tree has now been lifted up on his own tree of execution. I cannot make sense of it. I cannot encourage you enough to claim the freedom and the forgiveness that he has extended to all. Yes, I was there.
Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home.
There were many women in the life of Jesus, and there were many called by the name Mary. To his mother and to his beloved from Magdala, we are grieving with you this day. My name is Martha. My sister Mary and my brother Lazarus are here today also, and you will hear from Lazarus in just a few minutes. We are here today because Jesus was our very dear friend. He was like family to us. We did our best to care for him, and he took care of us. Jesus was the very best example of what friendship means. He knew what we needed, and he always encouraged us, always, to be our very best selves. He wanted us to live our lives fully. You know, even when it felt like he was treating us with very tough love, his love remained steadfast. It's hard to believe that we are here today. We are broken, so very broken, by the way he has been tortured. No one, under any circumstance, should endure such violence. But I know that is the world we live in. But crucifixions must stop. We are tired of the scare tactics of our government and the dominance of the empire. We are so tired. And Jesus wanted us to claim our own power. My sister Mary is no doubt wiser than I am and maybe more spiritually attuned. But I am the one who loves and cares for our home. And I love and care for people by feeding them. Jesus constantly reminded me how we should learn from one another. He wanted me to know that how important it was to spend time with God, how important it is to be in communion with the giver of our lives. He didn't realize that women could do more than one thing at a time. When I was preparing the house for him, I hung on his every word. I hope he knows that. But he wanted me to slow down and take care of myself by attending to him and to his teaching. It's a good lesson, but truthfully, I am tempted to be angry with God. I don't see where God is in this senseless act. I'm not certain at all that he was there. But Jesus said there was a plan, and he said this must happen. If he could trust, so should we. I was there. We were there.
Later, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so that the scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, I am thirsty. A jar of wine vinegar was there. So they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips.